Today, France is synonymous with refined culture and art, but that elegance was built on a foundation of recurring cycles of conflict and shifting borders that date back over 2,000 years. Long before it was France, the region was known to the Romans as Gaul. It was inhabited by a loose, fiercely independent network of Celtic tribes. Because they lived in a fragmented tribal society, they became a tempting target for a rising superpower to the south, the Roman Republic. This top-down tactical map shows the climax of that struggle, the Siege of Alesia in 52 BCE. A chieftain named Vercingetorix managed to unite the Gallic tribes for a last-ditch defense against Julius Caesar's legions, massing his warriors inside the fortified town of Alesia. Realizing a direct assault would be a bloodbath, Caesar opted for starvation. His engineers constructed a massive first wall, entirely surrounding the town, completely trapping Alesia. Anticipating Gallic reinforcements, Caesar then built a second, outward-facing wall to protect his own men, enclosing the Gauls inside a double-layered blockade. Facing starvation and with their relief forces defeated, Vercingetorix surrendered. The defeat marked the end of Gallic independence and signaled a transition for the region. Without internal cohesion, tribal networks were no match for a centralized state. By the late 400s AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. That collapse created a power vacuum across the region, which was quickly filled by migrating Germanic tribes, most notably the Franks. The Franks found their footing under King Clovis I. In the year 496, Clovis was losing a desperate struggle against a rival tribe at the Battle of Tolbiac. Facing imminent slaughter, he called out to the Christian God, promising to convert if his men somehow survived the day. According to the accounts, a sudden thunderstorm allowed the Franks to rally and win. Clovis kept his word and was baptized, cementing Christianity as a unifying identity for his new Frankish kingdom. That unified military strength was tested in 732, when Frankish forces halted an expanding Arab army at the Battle of Tours. Securing the kingdom's borders allowed Clovis's successors to centralize power, culminating in Charlemagne being crowned the first Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800. Pressed by foreign armies and religious rivals, the people of this region adapted. They traded their loose tribal networks for a centralized military state, backed by divine authority. In the 1300s, that centralized state fractured. Deep dynastic disputes over who rightfully controlled the French throne plunged the nation into the agonizing generational conflict known as the 100 Years' War against England. By the 1420s, the French crown was destitute, the military was demoralized, and English forces controlled massive swaths of French territory. The kingdom was on the verge of collapse. The rescue came from an unlikely source. A 16-year-old peasant girl named Joan of Arc arrived at the royal court, claiming God had instructed her to lead the army. She convinced the commanders, rode to the front lines, and broke the English siege of Orleans. Allied English forces eventually captured Joan, trying her for heresy and burning her at the stake in 1431. But her martyrdom reignited the French spirit, leading to a counteroffensive that permanently expelled English territorial claims from the continent. With foreign rivals gone, the French monarchy pulled all political authority inward. This reached its peak under King Louis XIV, who utilized an extreme concentration of wealth to keep his nobles isolated and under his control at the Palace of Versailles. Consolidating power under a single Sun King had kept foreign invaders at bay, but by granting the crown absolute authority, the state had inadvertently engineered an unstoppable domestic oppressor. By the late 1700s, a French treasury was drowning in debt from financing global conflicts, including the American Revolution. While King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette lived in luxury, the French peasantry struggled to afford basic necessities like bread. On July 14, 1789, that extreme inequality finally broke the nation. A furious crowd of citizens stormed the Bastille, a towering political prison in Paris. They demanded basic rights and ignited the French Revolution. What began as a push for democratic representation spiraled into chaos. The king and queen were executed by guillotine, and a radical named Maximilien Robespierre seized control. He initiated the Reign of Terror, a period where thousands of perceived political enemies were subjected to public executions. The violence of the revolution provided a harsh lesson. In their attempt to eliminate the tyranny of the monarchy, uncontrolled mob rules simply replaced it with a new form of absolute terror. Out of this political vacuum stepped a brilliant military general, Napoleon Bonaparte. He united the exhausted nation through his string of military conquests across Europe, but his ambition pushed him into a disastrous winter invasion of Russia, leading to his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. After decades of trying to rebuild a stable republic, the country was thrown back into the fire in 1914. During World War I, France became the primary battleground. Look at this soldier, standing knee-deep in flooded water. Entire generations lived and died in the trench warfare of the Western Front. They survived the trenches, but the peace was short. In 1940, the French military was overwhelmed by a rapid German blitzkrieg. Within weeks, the entire country was occupied by Nazi forces. Yet the French populace refused to break. Everyday citizens formed the civilian French resistance. They waged a shadow war against the German occupiers, gathering intelligence and sabotaging infrastructure at great personal risk. Their efforts paved the way for June 6, 1944. American, British, Canadian, and Free French forces launched the largest amphibious assault on Normandy in history to break the German defenses. By that winter, the occupation was broken. The French people proved they could withstand the devastating industrial warfare of the 20th century, as well as total ideological suppression. As military vehicles and cheering crowds gathered in the streets of Paris in 1944, the nation was fully liberated. The period of Nazi rule was finally over. From those ruins, modern France rebuilt itself. It stabilized its government and secured its position as a democratic pillar of the European Union. The story of France is a record of people continually redefining themselves in response to external pressure. From besieged Celtic tribes to the boots of occupiers, if you look closely, their identity is the product of defiance and survival against